My dear brothers and sisters, we gather here today not as strangers divided by fear, but as visionaries united by faith. We stand on the threshold of a great awakening, a moment not born of ease, but carved by struggle, hope, and the sacred dream of freedom. Yes, I say to you this hour, a new nation is rising, not built on the bitterness of our past, but on the boldness of our promise, not chained to the darkness of injustice, but marching into the dawn of dignity. This birth, this sacred birth, is not of soil or sword, but of soul. It is the cry of the oppressed refusing to be silent. It is the song of the forgotten refusing to be erased. It is the fire of the faithful refusing to give up. We are midwives to a new world, a world where every man is measured not by the weight of his wallet, but by the width of his heart, a world where peace is not a pause between wars, but a promise between peoples. And so I say, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream, for this is the birth of a new nation, not a nation of borders, but of brotherhood, not a nation of fear, but of freedom. A nation is not born of borders, but of belief. Belief in justice, equality, and the undeniable dignity of every soul. It is easy to look at a map and trace the lines that divide lands, but the true lines that shape a nation run deeper. They are drawn, not with ink on paper, but with sacrifice, courage, and the unshakable faith of a people who refuse to be told that they are less than human. When we speak of the birth of a new nation, we must look beyond the flags and the parades, beyond the declarations and the constitutions, and see instead the hearts of the people who carry that dream through suffering, through darkness, through the storms of oppression. For it is belief that builds the backbone of a nation, not castles nor cannons, but the collective conviction that every man, woman, and child is worthy of standing tall under the same sun. This belief begins in silence. It begins in the whisper of a mother telling her child, "You are somebody." It begins in the trembling hands of a worker who refuses to be degraded another day. It begins in the soul of a student who dares to question why their skin is seen as a burden instead of a blessing. It begins in the hunger of a people who have tasted injustice for generations but still believe in the sweetness of change. These are not the myths of history books. These are the daily rebellions of the spirit, the sacred push against the lie that one group is born to rule and another to serve. No border can hold back that belief. No army can crush it. No system can silence it for long, because once a people have seen their own worth, once they have heard their own voice rising in unity, the birth of a new nation is inevitable. And what is that nation? It is not a land fenced off from the world, but a light shining within it. It is not a nation that boasts of power while its people starve for justice. It is a nation where the dreamers are not punished, where the poor are not blamed for their poverty, where the skin you wear does not decide the chances you get. That belief transforms citizens into builders of something greater than themselves. It teaches us that the strength of a nation lies not in how high its walls are, but in how wide its arms reach. It is the belief that no child should grow up fearing the future, that no elder should die without dignity, that no soul should be told they are invisible. This belief is not passive. It is power in motion. It is marches that thunder through streets. It is songs sung through tears. It is sermons preached in jail cells. It is hands held across divides that once seemed unbridgeable. It is people who have every reason to give up, but every reason to rise instead. That belief spreads like fire, quiet at first, but unstoppable once it takes root. It gathers the weary and gives them purpose. It lifts the low and gives them vision. It calls to the broken and tells them they still matter. True independence begins not on the battlefield, but in the mind that dares to dream of freedom. Before any flag is raised, before any anthem is sung, before any chains are shattered, there is a spark, quiet, invisible, and deeply personal. It is the moment a human being looks inward and says, "I was not born to crawl." It is that silent defiance that takes root when a soul, once told to bow, begins to stand, first within, then with their body, then with their voice. For every revolution that shook the world began not with weapons, but with will. And that will, my friends, is born in the sacred chambers of the mind that dreams of more than survival, the mind that envisions a life not dictated by someone else's fear, but guided by the clarity of purpose and the thirst for dignity. It is within the mind that slavery begins to loosen, even while the body is still bound. There are those who would argue that independence comes only through war, through declarations, through negotiations at polished tables. But the truest kind of independence, the one that lasts, the one that transforms generations, is first won when a people reject the lie of inferiority, when they begin to question the stories they were told about who they are, where they belong, and what they deserve. That awakening may not be loud, it may not be praised, but it is unstoppable. It happens in the quiet rebellion of a young girl reading a book she was told she shouldn't read. It lives in the eyes of an elder who still remembers what it means to walk tall even when the world tried to beat them down. It grows in the hearts of the forgotten who still find the courage to sing. And what is freedom if not the ability to believe in possibility? The chains that grip us hardest are the ones around our imagination. If you can convince a man that he is nothing, he will never rise. But if you can help him see the power that lies within him, if you can show him that no man is born to serve another, that no child is destined to be less, then you have lit a flame that cannot be put out. That is where true independence is born, not in the breaking of governments, but in the breaking of illusions, not in the fall of empires, but in the rise of self-worth. It is this internal revolution that gives birth to external change. When minds shift, movements begin. When people begin to see themselves not as victims of fate, but as authors of their future, they no longer ask for permission to be free. They no longer beg at the table of power. They build their own. This mental liberation gives rise to courage, unity, and resolve. It is not enough to change the laws if we do not change the thinking, for a new nation cannot rise on old mindsets. It must rise on the daring dream of those who believe that freedom is their divine right, not because someone gave it to them, but because it was always theirs. The battlefield may win the headlines, but the mind wins the future. And once that dream has taken hold, no amount of fear, no system of oppression, no lie repeated often enough can contain it. The birth of a new nation demands the death of old hatred, old fear, and old chains. No nation can rise while it is dragging the weight of its past injustices. No people can walk freely into a new future while their feet are shackled to the broken ideologies that once enslaved them. Just as a child must one day stand apart from the shadow of their parents, so too must a nation break free from the shadows of oppression, division, and inherited bitterness. This transformation is not simply political, it is deeply spiritual, emotional, and generational. The hatred that once taught us to fear our neighbor, to mistrust difference, to see others as threats instead of as brothers, must be laid to rest if we ever hope to stand together in unity. There are those who cling to the past not out of love, but out of fear. They hold on to the chains because the chains are familiar. They embrace hatred because it gives them a sense of identity, however broken. But true nation building begins when we find the courage to lay down our old weapons, not just the ones forged in steel, but the ones forged in the heart. The weapons of prejudice, the swords of supremacy, the shields of silence, these must be buried so that a new people can emerge, not defined by what they are against, but by what they stand for. It is easy to point a finger. It is easy to hold a grudge, but the soul of a new nation is not formed in vengeance. It is forged in vision. The death of old hatred is not an erasure of history. It is the redemption of it. It is the act of saying, we will remember, but we will not repeat. It is the wisdom to carry the lessons of pain without allowing them to poison the promise of tomorrow. Fear may have built the walls, but love must tear them down. Chains may have been passed down through generations, but now it is time to pass down strength, healing, and hope. That is the sacred task before any people who seek to birth a new nation, to look into the eyes of those who once stood as enemies and declare, there is room for both of us in the sunrise. Old chains are not always visible. Sometimes they hide in our systems, in our language, in our education, in our silence. They whisper in policies and scream in the streets. They weigh down our children without them even knowing it. But just as chains can be forged, they can be broken. The moment a society chooses truth over comfort, accountability over avoidance, and unity over fear, the chains begin to fall, not all at once and not without struggle, but they fall, one link at a time, one heart at a time. To be reborn as a nation is to go through the fire. It is to confront the ghosts and declare that they no longer control the house. It is to bury what was broken and build what is beautiful. This is not weakness. It is the greatest act of strength, for hatred is easy, chains are heavy, but they are simple. True freedom demands the courage to let go, to rise higher, and to embrace a future that looks nothing like the pain of the past. Let us not seek revenge, but rebirth, not division, but divine reconciliation. The path to a new nation does not run through the valley of bitterness. It climbs through the mountains of forgiveness, courage, and shared purpose. Revenge may feel like justice in the heat of pain, but it cannot build a home where every child is welcome. It cannot heal the wounds carved into our collective soul. The fire of revenge consumes everything in its path, love, peace, and even the righteousness of the cause. But rebirth, true and lasting rebirth, plants seeds where ashes once lay. It asks not, who hurt us, but who will help us build something better. It moves past the hunger to retaliate and leans into the grace that creates new beginnings. We must choose the harder road. It is easy to mirror the cruelty we've known. It is easy to demand eye for eye, pain for pain, and wound for wound. But such a cycle leaves us blind and bleeding. Rebirth calls for strength greater than retaliation. It asks the wounded to become the healers, the oppressed to become the architects of peace, the silenced to become the voices that echo with wisdom and not just rage. This is not weakness. It is power under control. It is the kind of courage that stirs heaven and shakes the foundations of the earth. When a people rise from their suffering not with fists raised in vengeance, but with hands extended in reconciliation, they create a new way of living that breaks every mold of history. We cannot afford to build our future with bricks made of anger. We cannot pour the foundation of tomorrow with the poison of yesterday. Our children deserve better than that. They deserve a world where dignity is not reserved for a few, but where every soul is embraced as sacred. That cannot happen when we divide ourselves by the wounds we wear or the flags we fly. That only happens when we recognize that every man, woman, and child carries within them the spark of something divine. And if that spark exists in us, it must also exist in them, in those who look different, speak different, vote different, worship different. Reconciliation is not forgetting what was done. It is choosing what will be done next. It is choosing to build a bridge instead of another wall. It is standing in the rubble of what hatred has broken and saying, "We will not stay here. We will build something greater." A new nation cannot rise from the soil of division. Its roots must go deep into understanding, into shared struggle, into mutual respect. Divine reconciliation means we stop seeing each other as enemies in a war of survival, and start seeing each other as partners in a mission for revival. It means we confront injustice with boldness, but also with compassion. It means we remember our pain, but we do not let it turn us bitter. We let it make us better. This is how new nations are born, not just through constitutions and courts, but through communities that choose to heal. Through neighbors who choose love over suspicion. Through citizens who dare to forgive even when they have every reason not to. Freedom is not a gift passed down from the powerful. It is a flame lit by the oppressed and fanned by faith. It does not arrive wrapped in gold or granted by a generous hand from above. It rises from the dust, from the quiet cries in the night, from the hands that have labored too long without rest, from the voices that have shouted into silence for generations. It comes not from rulers who loosen chains out of mercy, but from the people who shake them off out of conviction. The story of freedom has never been written by the comfortable. It has been carved by those who believed in something greater even when everything around them said to stop believing. That flame, fragile but fearless, has burned in the hearts of slaves, of prisoners, of the beaten and the broken, and still it burns. This flame cannot be manufactured in courts or purchased through politics. It is born in the soul. It begins in the moment when a person decides they are more than their suffering, when a people discover they are not forgotten, and when faith whispers louder than fear. That flame has no color, no language, no border. It lives in every human being who knows what it means to long for more. More dignity, more truth, more justice, more life. It is the fire of mothers who refuse to watch their children inherit shame. It is the fire of workers who refuse to remain invisible. It is the fire of students who speak truth to silence. It is not the powerful who light this fire. They have too much to lose. It is the broken who ignite it, because they have nothing left to surrender but their hope. And once it is lit, no army can extinguish it, no law can smother it, no system, no cruelty, no generation of oppression can outlast the fire of faith, because this is not the kind of fire that destroys. It is the kind that purifies, that transforms, that spreads from soul to soul, until even the coldest hearts begin to thaw. It is the fire that keeps marching feet from stopping. It is the fire that keeps tired hands from dropping. It is the fire that says, even if I am not free today, my children will be. That kind of fire is sacred, it is divine, it cannot be owned, it cannot be traded, and it cannot be killed. The flame of freedom has never asked for permission. It has never waited for the right moment. It moves when it must, and when it moves, it calls people together. It does not divide, it unites the forgotten, the silenced, the afraid, and the brave. It lights a path where there was only darkness. It offers warmth in the cold places of history, and when that fire catches, it transforms the oppressed into liberators, the overlooked into leaders, the rejected into revolutionaries. This is the true power of freedom. It spreads. It lifts, it endures. It does not need permission from presidents or kings. It needs only a willing heart and a faithful soul. And once enough hearts catch fire, the world is never the same again. We are not just marching to change laws. We are rising to change hearts, to redeem the soul of a nation, because laws without love are hollow. Policies without compassion are paper thin. We can sign 1,000 declarations and pass 100 reforms, but if the heart of a people remains hardened, the wounds of the past will simply wear new disguises. This movement, this moment, this birth of a new nation must be more than the rearrangement of power. It must be the resurrection of conscience. It must dig deeper than courtrooms and climb higher than platforms. It must touch the spirit of every citizen, waking them from the slumber of indifference and calling them into the light of shared humanity. The soul of a nation is not measured by its wealth, its weapons, or its walls. It is measured by how it treats the least among it. It is defined not by the songs it sings on its proudest days, but by the cries it hears on its darkest ones. To redeem the soul of a nation is to give voice to the voiceless, to raise the lowly from the shadows, and to restore dignity where it was stolen. This redemption does not begin with power, it begins with presence. With the choice to see each other, to listen to stories long buried beneath prejudice, to reach across lines drawn by fear, and take hold of one another in courage. We rise not to conquer, but to connect, not to punish, but to heal. When we march, we do not simply move our feet, we move our faith. We declare that the moral arc of the universe may be long, but we are not waiting for it to bend. We are grabbing it with our hands, our tears, our voices, and we are pulling it toward justice. This march is not about visibility. It is about transformation. It is about confronting the truth that we have lived too long in systems built for some and stacked against others. It is about looking into the face of history and saying, "We see what you have done, but we will not let you do it again." Changing hearts means having the courage to sit in uncomfortable truths. It means teaching our children not just the names of heroes, but the pain of those whose names were never written down. It means challenging the stories we've been told and daring to write new ones together. A redeemed nation is not a perfect nation. It is a humble one that repents, restores, and rebuilds, one that recognizes that justice is not a destination but a discipline, that love is not weakness but the mightiest force on earth, and that no policy can do the work of the human heart. Only people can do that. This is why we rise, not because we are angry, though we have every right to be, not because we seek power, though we know what it feels like to be powerless. We rise because we believe in something deeper, something stronger, something sacred. We rise because the soul of a nation is not lost forever. It can be found again, reclaimed again, reawakened through mercy, truth, and the fierce determination of those who refuse to stop believing in what could be.